right, welcome back to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and Grok Media, LLC. Today we are blessed to have someone who has real-world experience with having their speech suppressed in the worst possible way. Elisabeth Sabaditsch-Wolff is with us, and she is the author of The Truth Is No Defense. I've got a copy of the book. You should get a copy of the book, even if you think we've dodged a bullet with the election of Donald Trump. So welcome, and thank you for taking time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve. And I do have to make a correction. The Truth Is No Defense is the first edition of the book. It's now called Truth Was My Crime.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I wrote them both down.
It's an updated edition of the book, so that's called Truth Was My Crime.
So there's a ton of things we can talk about that we need to talk about, but I'd like to back into them by beginning with what you thought about J.D. Vance's speech in Munich when he basically called out the entire EU on their oppressive speech tactics.
Well, you can tell by my facial expression, that I was very pleased. I still am. It's very interesting, though, that there were a lot of people who were pleased, but on the other hand, there were many, even Europeans, and I'd like to separate Europeans from the European elite, because we can get into that later. There's a great disconnect between the populations and their quote-unquote leaders. So I was extremely pleased. Of course, somebody finally called out these, to a great extent, non-elected leaders, and told them that this is exactly, what's happening. You guys are censoring European speech, people's speech, the population speech, and that doesn't sit well with us in the United States, who are footing a great chunk of your military games in the Ukraine.
Yeah, so what makes your experience unique is not just that you had your speech suppressed, oppressed, that you had basically been forced to speak using prior restraint, which is a term you use often, but you understand what it's like to live places where you can't speak freely because you've spent a great deal of time in your life in countries where Islam is the majority religion. What is it, especially speech? Obviously, they suppress a lot of rights. What is it Americans don't understand about speech in Arab countries and then in Europe, I guess?
Well, these are two different points that we need to tackle. First of all, the lack of free speech in majority Muslim countries comes from the Quran, where it doesn't say, well, you can't say what you want, but they phrase it, the Quran phrases it differently. You can only say what the Quran allows. And that certainly doesn't include free speech. It's free speech, but it's free speech according to the teachings, the ways and the teachings of the Prophet Mohammad. And that, of course, excludes a whole host of issues that you cannot discuss. On the other hand, the problem that we have in Europe, of course, is that we cannot speak out freely. We have the problem. Yes, we have freedom of speech, but there's no freedom after speech. So, and then of course there's another issue. It's multi-layered. Most Europeans don't really know what free speech entails, what it means. That free speech also means you carry great responsibility for what you say. I am very cognizant of the fact that, yes, here in the United States, I can say whatever I want, within the very narrow definitions of the First Amendment, and they're very, very, very narrow. However, does that mean I'm going to say everything I want to say? No. It means that I was brought up to be respectful of other people. And I would definitely not say everything I wanted to say. And do I have to? That's the question. What do I want to achieve with saying whatever I want to? However, free speech should be there to address uncomfortable issues. You don't need, as I write in my book, you don't need free speech for the Sunday talks of the Austrian president. That's not what free speech is meant for. Free speech is meant for addressing precisely what I addressed in 2010 or 2009 prior to that, I was prevented from saying that ever again. I have to use, as you said, prior restraint. I have to, point people to my book. If you follow me on X, you will see that I always preface my comments on I would like to say what I'd like to say. I would like to say I would like to make a comment on this post, but I can't. But I will point you to my book where you will find everything I said and what I would like to say.
Your story, of course, is about how you stated a fact, which is in your book, and how because you told the truth, the Austrian government and then the EU basically tried to destroy you. So give us some background, whatever you can actually tell us.
Well, I don't think they destroyed me. They tried to destroy me. Okay, they tried to destroy me, but in a sense, they opened the genie. They opened the genie of the bottle of the genie for me to fly out. That didn't really work out. They tried to silence me. I know they did, but it didn't really work because they empowered me. They actually empowered me to speak out. And then what they didn't understand is that I have a lot of contacts, a lot of friends here in the United States. And those people in the United States, they carried me through this entire process, both financially, because I wouldn't have been able to go through, take this court case all the way to the European Court of Human Rights, but also in supporting me by sending letters, by sending emails, by talking about my case. Now, that's what the powers that be at the time did not realize, that I had these connections and those new friendships that were forged all throughout this time. You wanted to know what I said, or what was the first part of your question?
What you did? I know you were doing seminars, right? And you were basically stating a historical fact, and the Austrian government didn't want you to say that.
Correct. The appellate, the appellate court said that while this is a historical fact, what I said, it is considered an excess of opinion. And it's really hard, after a decade and a half almost, to wrap my head around this crazy reasoning. And also what you have to understand is, since when is a court the arbiter of a so-called historical fact? What is it, what does the court have to do with telling me, well, what you said was a historical fact? We don't know that. We have no idea what a historical fact is. We weren't there. All we can rely on is the writings, quote-unquote writings, of a 7th century man who was illiterate. So how can a court even decide that this is a historical fact? So there's so many layers that we need to we peel away from the onion here. And the onion is, I said something that was true, and I'm not allowed to say it because it's called an excess of opinion.
It's an interesting take. So I can say what you said, which was a historical fact, which was that, and all my listeners and readers already know this, Mohammad had many wives. He had one that he married that was 6. He consummated his marriage when she was 9, and they continued to do so however long they did. And nobody disputes this. But you weren't allowed. You weren't allowed to say it. What I find interesting, as you explain what the Austrian court said, if what an illiterate 7th century man says can't be proven, why does Islam continue to exist as a religion? I mean, isn't that based entirely on everything that Muhammad said or did? I love...
It's such a clever system. It self-perpetuates. And every single person, husband, wife, children, they have their own place in an Islamic society to perpetuate all of this. Now, who am I to tell them what to believe? I don't have a problem with that. They can believe whatever they want, okay? If they want to believe in the black stone of the Kaaba in Mecca, so be it. I don't have an issue with that at all. What I do have an issue with is when this is taken to Western society and our little girls become the victims of these teachings of this prophet of Islam. That's when I get a problem. That's when I really I wanted to speak out and tell people, look, you have you have a prophet of Islam that many people on this planet Earth believe in, so be it. But once this is taken to a Western society where we believe that the bodies of children are sacrosanct, which at least we did back in the 2010s, now we don't anymore, then what follows is, do we actually consider this example of the Prophet Muhammad, that in a Judeo-Christian society that Austria is, do we consider this correct, legal, worthy of veneration? Because that's actually also what the European Court of Human Rights said in its decision against me, that Prophet Muhammad is worthy of veneration. Now the question is, for whom? For me? For you? I don't think so. So if he's not worthy of veneration for me, why can I not criticize these teachings? I did not say Muslims are all bad. I did not say Muslims are pedophiles. I never said that, and I would not. Because, we can go back to what I said in the beginning, that I can say anything I want in the United States. But does that mean I really have to? What am I trying to achieve? Do you really think I'm going to be does it make me a more popular person if I say, all Muslims are pedophiles, all Muslims are bad people? No, it's not going to not going to get me any brownie points, and it's not going to get me anywhere, because people are going to attack me. And they shouldn't attack me, they should attack my words. But nobody ever did that, you see? They all went after me as a person. How about if we talk about what I said? But nobody did. Because they all called me, from the different judges to the lawyers to the Catholic bishops in Austria, all the way down to the ordinary people. Even my mother and my sister at some point said, did you really have to say that? And also, you should have better kept your mouth shut, because otherwise you wouldn't be in trouble right now. Now, where's that going to get us? You see? And again, I don't believe that it's a wise move to attack people. I believe I should be able to criticize an ideology. I should be able to criticize Islam, just as I should be able to criticize Stalinism, Marxism, liberalism in the European sense, not the American sense. I should be able to criticize Hayek. I should be able to criticize Mises, if you know who I'm talking about.
No.
I should be able to criticize anything and everything, but it's ideology and not people. You see, that's where the difference is. And that's what the court system didn't want to understand, because they wanted to go after me personally, and not based on what I had to say. You see, that was the problem. And that's what we're seeing right now all over the place, especially in places like the United Kingdom, where I just read on X that my friend Tommy Robinson, what he's going through in solitary confinement for a non-crime, where he's locked away for 23 hours a day. That is what we're seeing right now. These are the true victims here. He said something that the powers that be didn't like. He just said something. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't murder anybody. He didn't steal. Okay? He said something that they didn't like. And that's what we're seeing all over the place in Europe. And that's why I'm here in America, to warn Americans that while things, the situation is not all that great, and I would add in parentheses yet, even during the dark years of the Biden-Harris administration, you still had the greatest political document ever written, and that is the Constitution, including the Bill of Rights. And you had a term limit of 4 years. You knew you had to get through the 4 years, and then you would have the chance to go to the polls and vote this man out. And then, of course, this woman. And you did that. We do not have that in Europe, Steve. We have crazy governments that nobody ever voted in. You see that in Austria, you see that in Germany, you see that in Romania, where the president was voted in by an overwhelming majority. And because the European Union didn't like what the man had to say, Mr. Georgescu. The European Union used an excuse. Of course, Putin is always a good excuse for anything and everything. It was his fault, Putin's fault, that Georgescu was voted into office, and that you cannot do. So the European Union made sure that the election was nullified, null and void. Now, Mr. Georgescu has been harassed ever since. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
And just yesterday, if I remember correctly from reading my contacts on X, he has been placed on a 60-day no travel list within the country. Now, what happens in 60 days? The elections will take place again. And because the powers that be know that Georgescu is going to be voted in with an even greater margin than before, they are harassing him and therefore put him on a no travel list, no travel ban, preventing him from campaigning. Now, these little totalitarian tyrannical people are trying to ban him from campaigning, but do you think that's going to do any good? Because people are going to vote for him anyway. And we see that in Austria, something similar, and in Germany. And that's, well, you can continue, but I just wanted to get that out.
I think that's important because people can now look back at the past 4 years in America at the sort of lawfare that was used to try to try to intimidate Trump, to keep him from running anything, to keep him off ballots and all this stuff. And Europe's been dealing with this for a long time, and in America we've seen it excuse me, in snippets. But, to have somebody who's Austrian, have somebody who's in Europe, somebody with your global experience, just, Americans they live in America. They're used to being in America. And even these little tiny steps in the direction towards tyranny, they're like, oh, that's just them. It's not going to bother me. It's that whole,
yes,
excuse me, they didn't come for me, so it's not my problem. But, we've been at Granite Rock. We've been talking about this since almost 20 years now. These are the little totalitarian tidbits that pile up. And then, you see an example of that when they raided USAID, and you see all these hidden conduits for money to all these groups. And we know we're going to find those in every single agency in the U.S. government. And, you have to not only show people that, but you have to explain to them what it's for. They're not just screwing around with free speech here. They're doing it everywhere. They're trying to get into people's governments and to manipulate who is in office for their personal advantage.
I can give you an example of,
Excellent.
In Austria, we had recent elections back in late September of 24, and the party that I voted for gained plurality in the election. But the new government was sworn in on this Monday, and the party that won plurality is not part of the government. I have not been represented in any government. I looked back just recently and thought about when was I last represented in government, and that was in 2016-17. And even back then, of course, I wasn't really happy with what was going on in the government, but at least I was represented. Okay? But I have not been represented in the past government, which was a Rhino Green government, a coalition government. And now, of course, we have a three-party government, which is a nightmare, because a three-party government just collapsed in Germany because they had snap elections in Germany, and it doesn't work. And we now have the worst government. I mean, I think if this government in Austria continues and is able to stay in power, we are going to witness the complete and utter destruction of anything that is called Austria. Their program, the program that they're working with for the next 5 years, because this is how long this is how long it will take until the next election takes place by law. I mean, the Rhino Green government already destroyed us, but the new government is going to just flatten Austria. And I have never been as sad and distraught as I was this past, today's Thursday, these past 3 days, because I know exactly where this is leading. And if you've read your Hayek and your road to serfdom, that is where it's leading. And necessarily, this will also include even more speech restrictions. That's just part of it. I mean, you cannot have a government that is unpopular, that no one wanted, without adding some form of speech control. And I can already tell you, the speech control is found in form of right-wing extremists that need to be, they're not calling it banned, of course, they wouldn't, but they need to be harassed, they need to be fought, and the sentiment is that they have no place in society. Now, mind you, there is absolutely no legal definition of what an extremist is. It's just in there, right-wing extremist. And a right-wing extremist is anything that the powers that be, the current government, the president, who happens to be a left-winger, don't like. So I wouldn't be surprised if I were, on a list. I mean, I know I'm on different lists, of course, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went after me again. But you know what? I don't own anything. So they can't take anything away from me unless they take away my freedom. And I would say, be my guest. Because if you take away my freedom, I will join the other freedom fighters in jail and we'll have a cup of coffee together.
Where does this go? Do you think Europe will bend the knee completely, nation by nation, or that the EU will do it? Or do you think there's any opportunity that the people who yearn for freedom can actually find some space somewhere on that continent?
We could have turned around the Titanic back when I started in 2007, 2008, 2009. But now, I'm sorry, that ship has that ship has sailed. There's nothing we can do about that. The tipping point has been reached. And don't ask me what's going to happen. I have my fears. But I had those fears back in 27, 28 already. And I was warned. That's the reason. That is exactly the reason why I was warning back then. I said, look, now we can still do something. If we wait too long, it's going to be too late. And we've waited too long. It's 2025 right now. And there's absolutely nothing that I can see on the horizon that is going to change anything at all. You do have, of course, Hungary with Viktor Orban. You do have Romania that is basically almost fighting a civil war right now, and I'm afraid it's going to turn into a full-fledged civil war because Romanians know what it's like to live under tyranny. But I don't think it's going to work because look, Viktor Orban doesn't want Muslim immigration, but the European Union says you're going to have to take in Muslim populations, and if you don't do that, we're going to fine you 220 million euros, which means we're not going to give you that money that actually rightfully belongs to Hungary. And we're going to add another 1 million euro fine a day until you agree to take in those Muslim refugees, quote unquote refugees. See, that's how it's done. You don't need the jackboots in the streets. People are always thinking, oh, well, you're not even close to a Nazi dictatorship, right? You don't need the swastika. You don't see the swastikas anywhere, and you don't have the jackboots. And well, wait. You don't need that. It's so much easier without the swastikas and the jackboots. It's being done right now, but people don't really want to see it. Okay? You don't need concentration camps. You don't need the swastikas. You don't need to preach tolerance around everywhere. People are silent out of fear. They're being forced into silence. Because look at what they did to Tommy Robinson. Look what they did to me. Look what they did to countless nameless, faceless other people. Look at the pensioner. The old lady in Germany. I don't know her name. I don't think anyone knows her name. She was awakened. She woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning only to have police inside her home, dragging her out of her home because she reposted a meme that the powers that be didn't like. That's what's happening. You don't need the concentration camps. It's absolutely not necessary. And for us to not call this tyranny, I mean, really? I mean, look at the definition of totalitarian. Look at the definition of tyranny. I mean, this is a textbook case. Plus the fact that, of course, that people in Germany and Austria and all across the European continent, I would make an exception with the Eastern European countries, but most people in Europe do not know what it means to be free, because they have been gaslighted and propagandized into believe anything and everything. And if you have no more values, and if you have no more freedom, and you never had it to begin with, how are you going to fight for something that you don't know even exists, and you don't even know that you need? Because most people say, leave me alone, I don't care. I just want to live my life. You see? I talk to ordinary people, but you have to see it from a European point of view. You and I look at it from an American point of view, but I also look at it from a European point of view. And I have many Americans that I talk to here say, well, then just rise up and do something about it. No, you can't do that. Well, then just vote for the party. Yes, we've done that. Look where that has taken us. It's taken us nowhere. I voted, but the party that I voted for, while gaining a plurality, is not part of the government. So maybe voting doesn't work, right? So where does that leave us? People don't really know how to use guns. There are a lot of guns in Austria, but I don't think anyone is going to really use them when the time comes. And of course, we don't have a Second Amendment. So do you think that I have any sort of reason to be hopeful at all? I don't think I do. I don't see it. I have been talking about this for the better part of 15, 16 years now. People have asked me the same question. Do you see any hope? And my answer is always, no, not really.
There's been some interesting rumor chatter that, under the Trump administration, the United States doesn't really have any use for Europe anymore, especially given its trajectory. I'm not sure what to think about that. It's always been our whole lives. It's always been this, the NATO thing that, when Europe before the EU, I mean, we were on great relations with just about everybody. And everybody saw that as the way the world was going to be. And of course, as you know, having been in countries that have been overthrown or have engaged in rather intolerant military behavior, that nothing's fixed. Anybody who pays attention to history knows that whatever we think is the norm and is going to be the situation moving forward, that's not it. Things change all the time. And let's just imagine, I'm trying to imagine if America and Europe just don't get along anymore, what that means for Europe. But I don't think it changes much, because based on what you've told me, they're already going down a hill they can't get back up.
Okay, two parts to this answer. Well, two parts to your question that I need to answer. The first part is Europe and America are so close that they're always going to be on the same trajectory. Maybe not trajectory, wrong word, but they care for each other. They might not like each other, but they're like brother and sister who get into a fight once in a while. And right now, America's like, I mean, what are you doing? I don't agree with you at all. I actually want to beat you up right now. But at the same time, Europe and America are going to make up at some point and be friends again. Second part, if America gives up on Europe, where does that leave America? Where are your friends and your allies? Are you going to look to the BRICS states? Are you going to look to China? Are you going to look to Russia? I don't think so. Are you going to look to the Arabian Peninsula? I don't think so. Are you going to look to India? Well, okay, you can have good relations with India, but, the brother-sister relationship, you're not going to find anywhere else than with Europe. Now, Europe is now the naughty little brother or sister, whatever you want to call it, and I agree, yes, that's a problem. You want to beat up your naughty little sibling right now, as President Trump is actually doing, which I like. I'm watching it from the sidelines, but I do like watching it. But I think separating Europe and America from each other is going to be a big mistake. But that's my personal opinion. I don't speak for anyone else. I do believe very strongly that America should not leave Europe. You might be pissed off with us right now. You have reason to be pissed off with us. But at the end of the day, this is a great alliance. This is a great friendship. We have a common history. We have, even in some countries, a common language. And I would personally be very disappointed if America gave up on us in Europe, because I've always been calling for America, you need to help us. You've done it before, you're going to have to do it again. So please don't give up on us. Yes, we're naughty. Yes, we're saying things that we shouldn't say. But just, beat us up. Do whatever you want to do, but don't leave us. We're part of the same family. Okay? That's what I have to say about don't give up on us.
Cool. So how do we make it so that I can go to Britain?
Right now, I think that's off the table.
Can America use that in some way that you can imagine that might make it possible for people who exercise free speech like yourself and myself and many others could go to some of these countries? I mean, my ancestors are from Scotland and England and some parts of Northern Europe. My wife is too. We've always wanted to go there, and now we can't. So, I mean,
you
I
can,
would like to.
but you can't. You're not banned. But do
I
you
won't
want
be
to
able to
risk?
leave.
Well, that's the question. Are you going to risk it? And right now, with Keir Starmer in office, you might want to rethink that. But look, that's the precise reason why I'm saying, America, don't give up on us in Europe, because we're going to have to do this together. We're going to have to get rid of these tyrants, these totalitarians. We're going to have to do this together. And I'm hoping, that President Trump and Vice President Vance, with the daddy in the house, they're going to give us a good spanking. And at some point, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but at some point, you have to, look, Steve, you have to believe that things are going to turn out all right. Okay? We can't just lie down and give up, because otherwise I would not be here with you, and I would be outside somewhere, maybe not here in Florida, but back home, skiing and or reading Danielle Steele novels while, guzzling down a few beers. But I'm not doing that. I have been working tirelessly to travel between Austria and the United States to remind Americans that A, you have the right to free speech, B, you have to fight for it, C, you have the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, the greatest political document ever written, and that means you are so privileged, you have to fight for it, but at the same time, don't forget about us in Europe. And I look forward to the day when I will be able to go back to Iran, which hopefully will be named Persia again, and to sit by the Caspian Sea and drink a beer with some of my friends and celebrate that Iran, Persia, is free again.
That would be great. One of our authors is named Emil Amani. He's Persian.
I know him.
You know
He's
Emil?
a friend of mine.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
been
yeah,
writing
he's a
for
friend
us
of
for more than 10 years.
mine.
Great guy. So it's nice to have his perspective of that. But I mean, I'm reading things in your book about your experience there. And I'm, like you love the bread and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, it really was just a place where people lived until they turned it into a theocracy. And,
Yes, and can I tell you one thing? One important point here is, and we can also loop that in with warmongering in Europe right now. It is sad to see that these totalitarians are always or many times women, and it's going to take women to take freedom back. The Iranian Revolution was in great part fueled by women who all of a sudden decided to wear the pitch black chador again. And as I describe in the book, I remember vividly, I was a 7-year-old or 8-year-old, these women, these angry looking black clad women in the streets screaming Allahu Akbar and Mark Bar America, which means death to America. And you see the same thing in Europe right now. Most of the madness, not all of it, but most of it, is fueled by women. If you look at Ursula von der Leyen, an unelected chief European Union bureaucrat, she's the mother of, I think, 7 or 8 children. And she is now talking about how she wants to send European troops to fight in Ukraine, while at the same time saying, oh, no, I'm not going to send my own children. You see Angela Merkel, who started this whole madness in 2015 by saying, oh, we're going to be able to do that. Wir schaffen das. This woman had never had any children. You have people like Kaja Kallas. I think she's from Finland. She's either from Finland or Estonia. I think she's Estonian. She's an unelected European Union commissar. And she's also screaming, we have to send troops to Ukraine. These are women. And on the other hand, you have people like Giorgia Meloni who said, not sending any Italian men and women to the front. Not interested. At the same time, you have the Austrian foreign minister, whose nom de guerre is NATO Beate. Her name is Beate, her first name. And she is so drunk on NATO, and so drunk on the European Union, and so drunk on Zelensky. She's one of the poster girls for Zelensky. The first thing she did as foreign minister on Monday afternoon, after she was sworn in, she went to the European Union representative, to his office, and held up a huge Ukrainian flag. Not an Austrian flag. A huge Ukrainian flag, and said, we stand with you, Mr. Zelensky. This is a woman, 3 children, 3 girls. It has to be us women to take back this movement of peace. We want peace. We do not want to send our children, our husbands, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters to war. For what? It's a pointless war, but we shouldn't even get into the point of the war. I'm for empowering women, and we need to do that. We need to take back the war. We have to get rid. Let's kick out the warmongering women and replace them by moms, true moms, who want peace. And I'm actually teasing something right now that I can't yet get into, but you will be able to see more of this maybe on my podcast. But definitely if you watch X, and if you watch Moms for America. I'm teasing something right now.
Okay, that's good to know. So how do people get in contact with you?
Well, go to my website, truthwasmycrime.com. There's an email that you can send me questions to, hate mail if you want. You can express your hate for what I have to say. But if you do, please do explain why. And don't just say, I don't like your nose, or I don't like your eyes, or I don't like your teeth, which, by the way, are perfect. Make your argument, okay? But don't just say, I hate your guts. That's not going to fly with me. You can also follow me on X. The handle is ESW_real, REAL, where I post both in German and in English. It's about, I would say, 90% English, 10% German. And follow me on that. And I'd love to get in contact with you. If you are interested in hosting me to speak, it looks like I will be back at the end of September, the beginning of October. And if you want to host me to speak, drop me an email and we'll try to work something out.
All right, Elisabeth, thank you very much for your time and your commitment. And just, I got the bug back a while ago. I understand where it comes from. The very first post I ever wrote publicly on not a major website, but it outraged people, and I was like, wow, this is kind of neat. I've actually said something that people disagree with, and it started a conversation, and here I am, like 20-something thousand published posts later, talking to you, and I mean, you were literally persecuted by your government. So thank you for that. Thank you for your persistence and not laying down, and for preaching this message, to help people realize that if they don't speak up, they won't be able to speak at all.
Correct. And remember, in Europe, you have freedom of speech, but you have no freedom after speech. There's a big difference.
All right. Thank you. Thanks again for taking time to talk to us, and you have a great day.